So we had the first very, very mild frost the other day, and I've been out and picked the rest of my chilies. This is the last of my chili harvest from this year. It's not been bad actually, but we perhaps started a little bit late, so I haven't had a massive harvest, but I've got these chilies to use up. I've got some Hungarian wax peppers, which are nice and sweet. I've also got these bird peppers. In fact, these have started to dry themselves out a bit. These are ones I picked earlier. And these darker green ones are jalapenos. So we've got a mixture of different chili heats here. And I thought I'd do some lacto-fermenting. I'm going to make a pickle out of this and some other vegetables, but not a cooked pickle, a fermented pickle. So I'm going to give these things a little rinse and then we'll get started. So the theory is pretty simple here. We just cut the vegetables into the pieces we want and put them in a jar and cover them with brine. And the brine is at such a concentration that it will favour the growth of lactobacillus and some other beneficial bacteria, which are present everywhere anyway. And those will grow and they will ferment and produce lactic acid, which will pickle and transform the vegetables. So I've got a variety of different peppers here. Some of them are quite sweet. The Hungarian wax peppers. And the bird chilies will be a bit hotter. So I'm leaving all of the cores and pith in because I want a bit of pungency. But I'm going to be throwing in a whole bunch of different vegetables as well. Just what I happen to have to hand. There's no actual recipe as such for this. This is just a case of throw together what I have, use the right concentration of brine, and we will end up with a pickle of some sort. So it's a very adaptable method for pickling really almost any kinds of fruits and vegetables. So quite a lot of chili is going in, but that's good. So first thing, I'm just going to chuck all of those chilies into that bowl, and we're just going to keep on adding things to it. I've got a few more chilies I'll add in a minute, but next we've got the last couple of courgettes off the courgette plants in the garden. And again, I'm only really thinking about kind of what I consider bite size here. So I'm going to quarter that lengthways. And then this one, I think for a bit of variety, I think we'll leave it as it is. And again, I'm just going to cut it into pieces. Nothing too chunky because the pickling brine has to make its way inside the vegetables to pickle them. So I don't want anything that's too chunky or it just won't be pickled. So we'll add that into the mix. Next, carrot. Would you look at this carrot? I know I keep getting excited by giant vegetables, but I look at the girth on that carrot. Isn't that a thing of beauty? I'm going to peel this because the skin isn't that great anyway, and we don't really want soil-borne bacteria getting into this pickle. So I think what we'll do is quarter it like that. Shall I leave it in great big slices like that? Yeah, I think that might be fun. I'm going to leave it in big half-moon slices, but cut them fairly thin. I want it to... No, those are too big. That's ridiculous. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, no, that is ridiculous, actually. I'm going to quarter it. Still going to make big, impressive slices. I'll leave a few like that. Now, none of these vegetables are going to be cooked as such, whereas a normal pickling process for me would be about cooking these vegetables in a vinegar-based solution. And it's the pickling process that kind of cooks them. It's a bit like cooking. I've also got a butternut squash here. So this is the tail end of a butternut squash. We ate the big, chunky, thick bit, and I've got this little bit left here. I think we'll use that as well. Just using a spoon to kind of scrape away that, not only the seeds, but that kind of stringy, mushy bit that you get inside of squashes. So I suppose this is really going to be the kind of lacto-fermented counterpart of my odds and ends pickle that I made last year. Or no, earlier this year, wasn't it? I still got a jar of that, which I'm saving for Christmas, by the way. I'm just going to cut these into pieces that I think might be nice in the final pickle. That's what I'm really thinking about when I'm cutting these up, is what's it going to be like in the pickle that we end up with. So a little bit of variety of chunk size will be nice, but at the same time I don't want great long stringy pieces or great long sticks or anything like that. because I want to be able to spoon this on top of noodles or whatever I'm eating. Okay, and in that goes into the mix. So I've also got some nice little radishes. Going to give them a little rinse and we'll slice them up as well. Now it's important to note that we are washing these things not to completely sanitize or sterilize them, because actually we need the bacteria that are growing on these things. So we're washing them really just to rid them of any dirt or debris that might be on the outside. So if you've never heard of lacto-fermented pickles, you might have heard of one of the examples of it, which is kimchi. So kimchi is a lacto-fermented cabbage pickle, although it's spiced cabbage pickle that's common in a lot of parts of Asia. It's probably one of the more ancient forms of pickling because it doesn't actually rely on there being any additional ingredients such as vinegar. It's all about letting a natural process pickle the vegetables. Of course, vinegar's a natural product as well, but vinegar is a different acid to what we will end up with in this pickle. We'll end up with lactic acid pickling these, which is a different kind of taste as well. So the lactic acid taste that you get from these pickles is more akin to the kind of sharpness you get in a strong cheese. Okay, I think that might do it for radish. So we'll have an onion in there as well. And again, I'm thinking about the size of the chunks that I want in the final pickle. So we're going for kind of quadrant slices there. Which seems about right. Not too thin. I want to preserve, these will stay a bit crunchy. So I've got 5 little cloves of garlic there. Just going to squish them to get the skins off. So I'm going to chop that small so that it infuses into the other bits and pieces in there. Might need to start packing this in the jar now because there might be too much stuff to go in, we'll see. Okay, now I want these vegetables to be well mixed, so what I'm going to do is just a couple of times tip them back and forth between 2 bowls, which will serve to mix them. If I had a really big bowl, I do have a really big bowl, if I had the really big bowl out, then this would be a lot easier anyway. Right, that's good. That's got them a little bit mixed. And then finally, because why not, I've got an apple left over from my veg box that was delivered last week. I'm not a big fan of eating green apples, but in a pickle like this, a crisp green apple will do 2 things. It will give it a bit of sweetness and variety of texture, but it will also contribute a bit of acidity, which will help to create a favourable environment for the bacteria that I want to grow in here and that will create the pickling. So we'll just get rid of the middle parts of those. And I have peeled them because I think that apple was coated in wax to keep it fresh. It was incredibly shiny. I've never seen such a shiny apple actually. It was like a mirror finish on it, which I think means it's been dipped in wax, which I'm sure is perfectly safe, but I also am sure I don't want to eat. So yeah, fruit and vegetables together in a pickle will create a nice bit of variety of flavours and textures and so on. And of course, some of the things in there are technically fruits anyway. The peppers and the courgettes are technically fruits. Just to prevent that apple from browning while we're waiting for everything else to happen, I will squeeze over a bit of lemon juice. And again, this lemon juice will help to create an acidic environment which the pickling bacteria will just love. And most importantly, the pathogenic bacteria, which might cause food poisoning, really don't like. So that's all kind of mixed up now, and my kitchen is a mess. I think I might just give it a couple of bits of this Chinese leaf. I'm going to lose the leafy bits of these. We'll just have the crisp sort of midrib bit of this. I'm just going to throw bits of that in as I fill the jar, actually, because otherwise we're going to lose all of this stuff every time I mix it. My jar is sterilised, but I'm going to rinse it out with spring water because my tap water has chlorine in it, and that will not help. That will not help with the pickling process. That will kind of inhibit the bacteria. It's not a big deal actually, and last time I made lacto-fermented pickles, I washed the greens with tap water and it was just fine. It still worked. but it is a risk. So now we're just going to carefully transfer these vegetables bit by bit into the jar. Seems like a bit of a tight squeeze, but it's going to be okay because I'm going to pack it down a little bit with a rolling pin. I do want a little bit of headspace in this jar because we've got to create a kind of airlock in a minute. So I'm going to pack it down tight, and that's fine. This won't prevent the brine from percolating down and filling the voids. That's about right. That's a little bit on the slim side for headspace, but it'll be fine. The brine is going to be 2.5% salt by weight. And the simplest way to do that is 5 grams of salt in there, which is 2 lots of 2.5, and then we'll make it up to 2 lots of 100. So we'll make it up to 200 grams with water. This probably won't be enough, but we can do this more than once. And again, I'm using spring water because this doesn't have chlorine in it. And that's a 2.5% solution of salt. And we'll see it fill up the voids. And I know I'm going to need a lot more. And I'll just keep on going. I think I'm going to do a double batch this time, so we'll go for 10 grams of salt. And so we'll be making that up to 400 ml, or 400 grams. I can't give you volume measures for this because salt will weigh quite differently depending on whether it's flakes or grains. And there we are, we're topped up all the way with brine. I'm just going to give that a little punch down with the rolling pin because I want air bubbles to come up to the top. Right, now I need to leave this to ferment somewhere for a couple of weeks. But I can't just leave it open, and I can't close it because it may produce gases and that may go kaboom. So I need to create a kind of makeshift airlock. And to make that airlock, I've got a food safe plastic bag, which I'm just going to stuff in the top there. I've got a tiny bit of my brine left over, which I'm just going to pour in there, which will help to kind of weigh it down. And I'm just going to push that down all the way around, make sure it's on top of there. So basically all of the bits of vegetables are completely submerged. And then this bag I will just tie off with a twist tie. It is a Ziploc bag, but I'm going to twist tie it just because it makes it more compact. Okay, that's my airlock, and then I'm just going to loosely put the lid on there like that to stop that falling out or getting knocked or anything like that. Further protection of the kind of household furniture and fittings, I'll stand that jar inside a bowl. If there's any kind of spillover, there shouldn't be. It shouldn't erupt or anything like that, but if it does, this bowl will catch any spillage. I've now just got to leave that alone for several weeks, and I've just got to leave that somewhere kind of room temperature. Doesn't want to be too cold or else that will inhibit the fermentation process. Doesn't want to be too warm or else it might just bubble over and get too lively. So just kind of comfortable room temperature somewhere, and I'm going to label it so that I know when I started this and I won't lose track of how long it's been fermenting. Right, it's the following day and I can see already there are some bubbles down here, which is good. That just means it's alive and it's doing its fermentation thing. However, I just got to make sure that we don't get any flies getting into here and laying eggs. I don't think it's very likely because there's only brine at the top here. But just as kind of belt and braces, I've got this bag of brine here that's weighing the vegetables down and keeping them underneath the brine. So that's my airlock. But I'm also just going to put another bag. This is a bag from a box of cereal, so that I make these into reusable sandwich bags. And then I'm just going to take a rubber band and secure that around the waist of the jar. So that will keep it all in place. And that's going to prevent flies getting up into that brine there. It should still allow gases to escape because pressure will build up in here and it can just blow through that rubber band. But that's going to stop flies crawling up there and laying eggs and making maggots. Don't think it was very likely in the first place, but belt and braces. So these vegetables have been fermenting for 5 days. This is day 6 today. Let's have a look and see what's going on. So, one of the things we will see is that there's quite a bit of gas. I don't know if you can see all the bubbles. There's quite a lot of bubbles being made, and that's normal. And so what will be happening in here is various different microorganisms, yeasts, bacteria and other things will be competing. And because we put salt in there, that inhibits some of the things that are really nasty, like botulism and salmonella. It also encourages some of the other things like yeasts and lactobacilli. Now, we put quite a bit of sugar in there because we had carrots and radishes and a few other quite sweet vegetables. That could encourage alcoholic fermentation, so we might have had a bit of that. But then we'll probably find also that alcohol will turn to vinegar. So we may end up with lactic and acetic acid in the final result. So in theory, this should be quite acidic by now on day 6, and it should already be so acidic that a lot of the phase 1 microorganisms, which might be harmful if I ate them. So if I'd have taken a spoonful of this on day 3, it might have made me ill, because I might have got infectious food poisoning from it. However, as time goes on and the acidity increases, or the pH lowers, all of those nasty things will tend to die off, and the lactobacillus will really come into its own, do the fermenting, make the acid, and that will pickle and preserve the vegetables. That's all a lot of talk and theory, but how do we know it's acidic? Well, it just smells really tangy for one thing, but that could be the onions and garlic. So I've got a test strip, I've got some pH testing strips here. We don't have to guess, we'll give it a test. So a little dab from the end of that chopstick, and what we've got here is a pH of, I'd say about 3, which is very nicely acidic. So 7 or so is neutral, anything above 7 is kind of base, so alkaline, and obviously below 7 is acidic, and we've got a pH of, well, 4 or somewhere between 3 and 4 there, 3.5. So I'm very happy that that's nicely acidified and is going to be a safe pickle when it's finished. Now that it's doing this, I'm going to move it somewhere cooler. So I'm going to move it to a cooler room. I'm going to take out this airlock and redo this as well, because there is quite a lot of liquid that's come out of these vegetables. So just using a turkey baster, I'm going to remove some of this liquid, which is pink in colour, and that's not a cause for alarm, that's just colour that's come out of the vegetables. That should allow me just a little bit more space to press those vegetables down and to add a bit more water to the airlock for a slightly better seal. So I'm just going to press those down like that. Just need to make sure that all of the vegetables are submerged, which they are. My hand is actually inside the bag here, so my hand's not in contact with the solution in the jar, it's only in contact with the water inside the airlock. And actually I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to tie that off here, flip that lid over again to keep it partly covered, and then back on with this bag to keep the bugs out, the actual insects. That just keeps that bag tight against the jar there. That will stop any flies getting in, but it will still allow gases to escape. So that's pretty much it for part 1, I think. We're going to leave this for a couple of weeks now to continue fermenting, to continue the activity of those lactobacillus. It's in a slightly cooler room, so this is about 12 to 14 degrees Celsius in here. So activity will slow down, but also the cooler conditions are just fine for the lactobacillus. So another couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, until that will be ready to decant into smaller jars and then refrigerate and use. So that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will be available as and when it happens. If you've got any questions about this whole process, then do feel free to ask in the comments, although I'm not by any means an expert on this. I'll put some links in the video description to useful resources about lacto-fermenting. Hopefully that will answer most of those questions. So I'll see you in part 2. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.